with were disregarded, basically, and we are very concerned on how we can move forward with this document. Going specifically to the details in our proposals right here, we would highlight some elements that are of utmost importance for us to move forward. First of all, on scope, there's no possibility of us going along with a scope detailed in paragraph 23. We have not agreed at any chance on the fund doing what is described in paragraph 23, including on supported preparatory work, the focus on the priority gaps that we don't even know what they are. This language on priority gaps, it was not discussed, and we are not going to entertain that discussion. So we're still very adamant on our option 20, which I understand is 25 out, on the scope being based on the principles of the convention and its provisions. We also need precise language on the legal status of the fund. We do not think it is sufficient for us to go with the paragraph how it is drafted right now. We understand that we need the fund, a clear statement that the fund shall possess international legal personality to avoid all of the issues and concerns that the G77 has been highlighting in this process specifically. On the board composition, again, we are of the view that we can build from relevant experiences, namely the GCF, and I think we're heading towards that direction here. We would also need to make adjustments, of course, in paragraph 31 when it comes to the non-voting members. We understand that this could be addressed properly in paragraphs 32 and 33 by including the language on indigenous peoples and so on. We have discussed this climate-induced migrants. We should also understand how they would be organized, but overall our position is that we can't go with the GCF model and update paragraphs 32 and 33 accordingly. And in this respect, of course, paragraphs 38 and 40 should not have the necessity to have this language around the voting non-members, since we would go with the GCF model, let's say. Paragraphs 66 to 70 on the subfunds. This is prejudging the very outcome of the decision. Again, we are not in favor or not in a position to support the World Bank option, and I understand we're not necessarily speaking to that, but because of this principal position, we're not in a position also to support this paragraph 66 until 70. One of the key elements, actually, that I should highlight on behalf of the G77 is our preoccupation on paragraph 75 that talks about the financial inputs to the new fund that we are going to establish to respond to loss and damage. The current drafting of the text is simply not acceptable for G77 in China. This is a matter of principal position of the group that we need to reflect the principles and provisions of the Convention and the Paris Agreement. And they are clear on the responsibilities of developed countries to provide climate finance to developing countries, not only in mitigation, not only adaptation, but also on the agreed full costs of developing that encourage in developing countries in meeting their positions in the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. So we do need language there clearly stating that the developed countries are to provide finance to the fund here in this paragraph 75. So we're not in a position to support the way it is currently framed. Also, there's language here that we have repeatedly asked for deletion in previous TC meetings around the voluntary carbon market and pricing mechanisms that are still going to be established or are under discussion in other fora. So this is not something that this is definitely something that we cannot accept in this financial input. neighborhoods. And this is one of the key elements that we need to reflect on this decision tax and on the governing instrument of the new fund. Finally, on paragraphs, I think this would be my preliminary comments on that specifically. And just to finalize, we should, it's again the G77 principal position that the fund, the standalone fund that we're looking for to assist developing countries in responding to loss and damage, it should be assigned and confirmed as an operating entity of the financial mechanism as per Article 11 of the Convention. This is a key element for us in this regard. Okay. All right. I'm going to come back with other elements, of course, in the understanding that our G77 colleagues will also complement. I see many of them with their flags raised, but these would be your preliminary comments on this draft in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. Alvaro, please.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. I fully agree and support the comments that were put forward by Matthias representing the views of G77. And I will not be repeating all the comments, but this is a flag that was up from the very first meeting we had this morning when you presented the text. So I just wanted to highlight here at the outset that we came here very hopeful, and we're still hopeful to agree on an outcome that would take into account all our different priorities, and also an outcome that will help us really move forward on operationalizing this very important fund. This is a procedural question and point to you, co-chairs, that I want to highlight clearly. Given the many comments and given the mode of work that is being conducted here, I just want to highlight that this text will have no status until we manage to complete and agree on all the different elements in the text. As mentioned, I see that the text is completely unbalanced. There are many different options that were submitted by our group that are not reflected as options in the document, but there are also other views that came from other submissions that are reflected as sub-bullets within the text. There are many points that are of complete difference and complete divergence, and some points that are completely beyond the scope of this technical committee to address or to reach an outcome to. So I wanted to maybe get the clarity from you on what is the mode of work, if we're not going line by line at this time an hour. We think that we strongly reiterate that this technical committee is mandated to complete its work and agree on a set of elements that will help us on the establishment and operationalization of the fund. So we cannot really see this whole text being complete without really agreeing on all the different elements. And I would really encourage us also to stay away from addressing those elements that are not addressed at the broader perspective under the COP and CMA. There are many elements that would touch upon important aspects that are within the principles of the Convention and the Paris Agreement, and would require really renegotiating the Paris Agreement itself in order for us to agree on those elements. So we have a mandate ahead of us. We're really committed to reach an outcome today, and I would really call on all of us to work constructively to try to find an outcome that would really address all the elements and leave no questions unanswered, and go forward with a clear text, especially after hearing the wise words of guidance and expectations with regards to COP28. So with that, I will maybe leave the floor to other colleagues to come in with specific comments, but I would want to hear from you about your way of taking on the comments, because I do have a set of maybe 20 comments or more on the text. So I want to see what would be the best way for you, co-chairs, to capture those comments and come back with ideas that, or a text that would actually be balanced and take into account all the different opinions and views. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvara. And just specifically on the mode of work, given that the text was only very briefly introduced this morning, this is now the first opportunity to kind of take the temperature of the room. So again, I very much sort of appreciate the way that Mateusz highlighted what were the key issues in the document, so that we can collectively get an understanding as to what are the pressure points in the document, and then Richard and I will reflect on what is the next step. So kindly bear with us for this first round, and then we'll see how we go forward. Next, I have Mo, followed by Haja, and then Diane.
Thank you so much. And looking around the table on the flags, you can always, or you can easily see if this text is balanced or not. It's developing countries raising their flags to comment on the text. Others are not raising the flag. So from there, if I take it from there, let me highlight elements. Our understanding for any fund to function, it has specific requirements. Some of them are reflected in the document. Many of the principal elements are not, or are put in brackets. From our point of view, to function, this fund to function, as our understanding, it has to have legal personality. So what we have there is not having anything. It is very simply going in the direction of one very specific option that is still at the option that are put forward. Second, it has, because it was created by the COP and the CMA, and we have spoken about it being an operating entity, it has to be an operating entity, as was mentioned by Matthias, which I fully support and subscribe to what he have mentioned. Third element, it has to have a replenishment process. So not say that it might have or it may have a replenishment process, and it may have contributions. So it's maybe a fund. So it is a maybe fund rather than a fund. And then those are the main principles or main pillars, main guiding elements that I think are very important for us to agree on. In addition to what Matthias have mentioned, of course, there has to be clarity on the sources. But also I see that in some cases you went too far in the details, including giving like the executive director, if it is an executive director, and going in details of a personalization of the link between the board and the executive director or the secretariat. I think we don't need to go in that level of details. We can have simple language whereby the board can mandate or deliver part of its decision-making process to the executive director. So this is clear. I think it was paragraph 47 or something. I can look into that. Then there is the paragraph that is already confirmed by the decision. I think that was paragraph 78. So why are we repeating the paragraph 78 here when we're talking about the financial inputs? Those are the inputs to fund the fund. So we are saying that it will receive contributions from. And the second one is a replenishment, which says may have a periodic replenishment. And then it is going to have a mobilization strategy. So I don't see paragraph 78 fitting in this discussion on financial inputs. So I think this will be deleted because it's already covered in referring to the decision rather than going forward with different elements. I stop there. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it is obvious where if this text is balanced or not from the level of interaction that you're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Next, I have Haja, followed by Diane, please.
Thank you, co-chairs, and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to, in addition to what my colleagues have already mentioned, I want to introduce some proposed edits in paragraph 63 to clarify direct access and non-direct access. So if you go to 63, instead of the board may, we want to ask if you could consider putting the board shall. And on A, we want to say direct access via direct project support through national governments or in partnership with entities that have been accredited to other funds or otherwise through domestic partners. And for B, direct access via subnational, national, and regional entities screened for functional equivalency in accordance with the procedures and criteria developed by the fund or in partnership with entities accredited to other funds. And on C, non-direct access via multilateral or regional, sub-regional implementing entities accredited to other funds such as the GCF, the GEF, the Adaptation Fund, or otherwise through implementing partners appointed by the board. So these are some of the proposed changes to the text in paragraph 63 to clarify direct access and non-direct access. Thank you.
Thank you, Haja. Next, I have Diane, followed by Adao, please.
Thank you, everybody, and co-chairs, thank you for this text. So I'm just not clear what we're going to be doing. We don't have much time in the day, and of course, we only got this text on the last day of TC4. So at this point in time, I mean, I'm kind of figuring out what it is that we possibly can do from here. Anyway, one of the issues that I pointed out in TC1 on behalf of AUSIS is that we want a fund designed for everybody, but we want to make it clear that whatever is set aside, whatever LDCs and SIDS, especially SIDS, could access, that it should be set aside and it should be done in a way that we can actually access it while it's set aside. Based on the text that is provided to me here, with respect to, we said the set aside should be through an allocation system. We will thank all of us for listening, and we have a suggestion on an allocation system, and we have two options. And I don't want to comment on either one of them at this point in time, but based on what I'm seeing here and based on the conversation, I think, and based on also the opportunity, the probability of the fund being located within the World Bank, I think for AUSIS we have to now decide an approach that will be better for us now that we're seeing a picture of the fund emerging. With respect to this, therefore, I think at the beginning I wasn't too sure of the sub-fund approach. I know Matthias said on behalf of G77 that we are considering it and have nuances, but I think with some tweaking of the language we could support the idea of having some sub-funds, especially one for small markets, and that way we will guarantee that smaller and developing states will not have to be competing with larger countries just to get some funds, which is what is happening in other funds. And there's a lot of uncertainty here. So right now at this point, my assumption is that when 5 o'clock, when some of us leave, we're closing out this conversation. So based on the options available to us for AUSIS to ensure certainty, the sub-funds would be something we could consider with some changes in the language. With respect to other issues, I think we can figure them out. I'm not sure if you're going on to the issue of arrangements as yet, but anyway, it's the first time we're seeing that text. No, right, so I'm just wondering what we're going to do with that particular text. And those issues that we don't agree on here, clearly they're important to those parties who are, who would put them forward, like how would we deal with those kind of things. So just in summary, we're seeing a fund that is developing, an architecture developing, and it's probably going to be with the World Bank. If not, fine. If it's going to be a standalone, fine. But either way, I think the use of sub-funds would be a way that we can guarantee something has been set aside for smaller and developing states, and that we can access it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And precisely just to on your question on the mode of work. I mean, what we are now trying to do is to take the temperature of the room so that we can then assess as to what is possible to achieve, and to what extent we can really sort of conclude our work in a way that certainly, as I believe both of the co-chairs were absolutely dedicated to, so to make sure that we deliver a solid outcome on all of the aspects. We will close today, but I for the time being, I'm refusing to say at what time. It really depends, kind of on how. On the pace that we now manage to work through the issues. Next, I have Adao, followed by Angela, please.
Thank you very much, co-chairs. Good afternoon, colleagues. Let me express my sincere thanks to your leadership in providing different elements together before us. I do see that we have options, we have brackets, and we have some agreed language. So my first point will be the process. We still have 3 hours, and then we need to finalize everything. But we hear from different colleagues, there are some differences that we need to manage. And we also hear from the co-presidency this morning that we need to finalize everything. Don't leave some elements to anyone. So this is the thing that we need to think about, whether we are going to hand over this to the co-presidency or we still have some other set to discuss about this. My second point is of substantive elements that we have put forward. Let me support Matthias' views with regard to the positions that made by 77 and China. First point that I could add would be grant base for LDCs. I think it's very weak in the text that we have received. So I think we need to address this issue because of capacity of LDCs to address real loss and damage, both from stream and also slow onset events. My second point is of course, focus that we agreed in San Jose. I think it was also raised by others. But let us to be focused that our decision was ex post and ongoing with regard to slow onset events and also stream weather events. Stream weather events very weak in this text, as I can see. So we really need to have a focus that is clear and reflect to our decision in Samuel Sheikh. Of course, economic and non-economic loss and damage, that's also part of. But rehabilitation, recovery and reconstruction is key from agreed language. So we need to be clear that all those key elements need to be captured. My third point with regard to the substantial issues is trigger issues that we propose as LDCs linking to stream weather events. It's still quite weak. So even base access modality is something that we also need to insert into the current text. Because it's almost not possible for developing countries to provide, let's say, some sort of program-based approach for both stream weather event and also slow onset events. But we need to have triggers in place, so once we are hit by loss and damage, we need to get access the fund quickly. I think we need to have that sort of modality in place as well. And in terms of my next point is issue of objectives. The objective of this fund is, let's say, again, only more focusing on programmatic approach. We need to have some sort of process related to trigger issues with regard to stream weather event. I think para 22, I think I do not need to go with para by para, but para 22, we also need to reflect to this issue of objectives I just mentioned. And lastly, para 78, I think we are here to discuss something out of that. So we really need to consider the para 78 could be deleted from the text. I think that will be useful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adao. Next, I have Angela, followed by Sumaya.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Just first of all, let me express my appreciation to both of you in terms of trying to bring us with new text. But I just want to support the comments by Mateos on behalf of G77 and our G77 colleagues in terms of the text that we have in front of us. I just want to reiterate and also support them in the sense that we do not see a balanced text in terms of the comments and proposals that we have here. I'm not going to repeat most of the things that were raised by G77, but perhaps just to highlight some of them. Let me start by the scope, raising that we do not see paragraph 23 as the scope that we are looking for the loss and damage fund. The reference of related to small markets, it's unacceptable for us. So we're still with our paragraph at G77, which is the 25 out, and just as was mentioned by G77, the reasons that were expressed by them are the same reasons that we have in terms of paragraph 23, and it's not acceptable for us, the text as it is. In terms of the board, if I'm not wrong, paragraph 31, we also, as we mentioned before, we can go along with the GCF model. And let me highlight, as was mentioned by Mateos, letter H, we think that perhaps it could be, somehow merged with paragraph 32 or 33. And let me move to paragraph 75. We think that it's important to see somehow differentiation here. And as I mentioned before, the climate change, we didn't create climate change. We are not the big emitters. We are not part of the problem of climate change, but we are affected in terms of we are suffering the effects of climate change. So paragraph 25 as it is unacceptable. We want to see differentiation and equity in terms of the inputs and resources and predictability of resources from developed countries in order to ensure that all of us get access to predictable resources. On paragraph 26, I fully support Ambassador Mo, and as mentioned by G77, we need to see replenishment. This is not a may option. We need to see a shall as part of this paragraph, and we want to delete paragraph 78. In terms of, sorry that I'm jumping, on paragraph 70 and paragraph 79, and as well as paragraph 36D, which are related to vulnerability. We are all vulnerable. Let me repeat once again. We are all vulnerable. We do not want to see any kind of differentiation. And as well as in terms of paragraph 114, we have integrating vulnerability into allocation decision. This is unacceptable for us. Unacceptable for us. We are all vulnerable. We cannot accept any kind of indexes that leave us behind. And finally, well, we have a lot of concerns with the funding arrangements, but just let me highlight that in paragraph 121, why we are asking parties to include non-economic losses into the national adaptation plans. It doesn't make sense. Non-economic losses is not adaptation. It's totally different. So we have a lot of concerns. Let me highlight once again that for us it's important to see clarity on the sources. Of course, we fully support a fund as an operating entity of the financial mechanism, but at this point, Madam Chair, co-chairs, we see with concern the outcome that we are having here. Differentiation is not for developing countries. Differentiation should be in terms of sources, replenishments, allocation of resources, not ask and divide the global south fighting for money, because we are not responsible for climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Next, I have Sumaya, followed by Jaime.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Let me start by thanking you both for the hard work and for the Secretariat, in spite of our criticism. But we appreciate the hard work. Like colleagues, I like, because many of the issues were raised, and I don't really want to repeat what they have just said, but I share the sentiment in relation to paragraph 25 alt and the issue of the board as well, composition. I would like to state that, as we indicated, that we don't support the issue of sub-fund. It would be necessarily to reflect in line with the language in paragraph 6, because it talks to the operationalization, the access and modalities and creation of an instrument. For us, it's important to see that there will be provision to reflect all the issues reflected in the scope. So we represent countries that they have different interests in different thematic issues. So all the issues as reflected in the scope, the loss and damage associated with extreme event and slow onset event, for economic and non-economic losses, issues related to recovery, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and safe dignity, mobility, all these should be an instrument for provision of financial resources, because that's important to see all these issues taken by the board, and we need to see how they will provide funding for that. We represent countries that are really big. Just think about Ethiopia, a very huge country that small market mechanism might not work for, and a slow onset event, because the landlocked, will not work for. So we need to think about how about the diversity in risk that cover the different countries. I would like to underline that the notion of transformative recovery reflected in paragraph 59, because we didn't really have opportunity to talk about, will be more comfortable to see that notion deleted. And I would like also to stress, like other colleague, that the lack of differentiation in paragraph 75A will really disappoint the poor following the poor around the whole world, that are going to know that they will continue to pay for loss and damage, because this paragraph will certainly say that we, as it is stand, we are going to pay for loss and damage ourselves. So I think this is fundamental that we look at the principle and the obligation of the Convention and Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumaya. Then turning to Jaime, followed by Heike.
Thank you very much. I seem to be the first from our constituency to speak, and we've done so not because we are in love with the text, but because we have been listening to our constituency all morning, and we were very happy to also listen to yours and your concerns and see what the mood is, because that's precisely what we need to be able to land the deal. And we want to compliment the co-chairs who've been working very, very hard to try to find some sort of commonality and common language. And of course, we're not going to be happy with it, and that's part of the negotiations. There are going to be elements that we can't live with, some elements that we don't like, but we might not prioritize, and areas that you do want to see in it. So great compliments to Richard and Uti for a lot of work done and getting a lot of hassle for doing this kind of work. Now, I want to respond to Diane and to Angela. Diane needs safeguards. And these safeguards, because LDCs and SIDS have structurally been in climate finance always at the end of the stick. They never received enough resources for climate finance. So I totally understand Diane's point of view, and willing to work with her on allocations, sub-funds, whatever you need to create those safeguards. But on Angela, I totally agree with you as well. You don't want to be excluded. And those two things, having safeguards for a certain group has always been excluded, and you don't want to be excluded as well from this fund, we can find compromise language on that to make sure that everybody feels fine. And we as donors also need safeguards to make sure that the funds going into this, whomever is going to contribute to loss and damage, feels that they can explain this with the right procedures, etc., for the citizens to know that the taxpayers' money is going and is being well delivered. I don't think all of that is unreasonable, and I really think also with the call of the UAE incoming presidency, we can work on this text to come and deliver. I might come back on all the issues that I don't like, and I'm ready to do so, but because there's quite a few of them, and but I'd rather work on those elements where we actually can land this thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaime. Next, Heike, please.
Thank you very much, Uti, colleagues, and let me also start out by thanking the co-chairs for the draft and also having the patience to go through with all of us through the discussion, because I think, isn't it a saying that when all of us are unhappy, that's not maybe very easy for the co-chairs, but it's, I think, like how these negotiations are going. And I must thank also the colleagues who came before me with concrete proposals on language and where to build on each other, and also sharing your different views. Because I strongly believe we really have now to speed up and get a result today, and still a result without brackets. Yeah, that is still my vision, and to get there, I will only briefly reflect on a couple of points, but not like list them all and talk about them, because I think then we will neither have the time nor maybe the spirit to find compromise. And so just to say that when I looked at the text this morning, I thought, we already showed flexibility yesterday and the day before on a couple of points, talking about my exchange with Richard on putting the eligibility in brackets or no. And now it's out there, full-fledged, on the World Bank interim, also on the board, and I will come to that, and on others. And now I see COP CMA without brackets. And just to highlight, I mean, briefly my level of discomfort. Maybe let me explain some issues that I would like to highlight that came not up yet in detail. On the board, I really feel strongly that we have to be more ambitious in order to be more inclusive for non-state actors. And I cannot envisage us setting up a board that, for example, has no representation for women from non-state actors. I would really encourage all of us in the spirit that we already see in the co-chairs draft, but to go beyond and seek more compromise. And the second point, I would like to take on also what Diane and Ado was sharing. I think with the two versions on allocation in the text, we have a very good basis to take the next step quickly and find more common ground. There are so many commonalities that we already see in the two versions. I have to be very clear that we cannot accept a national minimum allocation floor, but we are open to discussing other aspects of the G77 text. And I feel that we have similar objectives that we can meet with, for example, an allocation floor for LDCs and SIDS to operationalize the commitment to these country groups, recognizing their special circumstances. But I also want to be very clear, responding to Angela and also other colleagues, of course, that we clearly understand the very real needs of all other particular vulnerable countries. So outside the LDC and SIDS group. So to address situations for particular vulnerable countries that are then, due to the scale of the event and their limited capacity to really deal with this event. We have to make provisions, and we were always very clear on this. And you find it also in our submission and the different texts. And Pakistan is then always mentioned, and I understand that, we understand that, and clearly we would like to find a way to have concrete language on that. So in this spirit, I stop my long list of worries and would really hope that we, after a short round where everybody can share their views, then get down to solve these outstanding issues.
Thank you, Heike, and just to assure you that I don't think there's anyone more eager to make sure that we resolve the outstanding issues than Richard and myself sitting here. Next, I have Ali, followed by Christina. Ali, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair. First of all, allow me to join others in thanking you and Richard for working hard and giving us this text with which all of us are equally unhappy. Yeah, both sides. So that means it's a good basis to start with. I'll not go into details and repeat everything what has already been said by our representative Matthias. I'll just highlight two things on eligibility. Thank you for bringing up this para 56, which highlights the language or takes the language from the Sharm decisions. And Heike, if I take you that you are not willing to put brackets on it again, and you have already shown flexibility. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the way it is presented here, the eligibility text on 56, the decision language, is it acceptable to you? On allocations, we are ready to discuss that my preferred choice obviously is 87 para, and we can, again, there are some elements in from 82 to 87 which I like, but we can work together on this to tweak it a little bit to actually accommodate the concerns which our colleague Diane has highlighted. And there is a basis that we can work together in allocations, but my understanding is on eligibility as a whole, we are okay with Sharm decision language. On para 75, I have a view that that in its current language, the way it is presented to us, we are actually creating a fund which is, allow me to repeat what in the morning we heard from the incoming co-president, an empty bank account with no obligations. It's a voluntary, we're making a voluntary fund where those who are interested and they can contribute, and regardless of whether they are developed countries or developing countries. So I support what Matthias has already said and Albara has said, that there is a need to strengthen to reflect the responsibilities under Convention and Paris Agreement of the developed countries to provide finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, and precisely just to confirm that certainly from the co-chair's perspective on eligibility, the language that you have there as clean language, that is the co-chair's proposal, and we stand by it. Also, very encouraged by your willingness to work together and find solutions, and indeed. We'll see after this round that whether we can suspend briefly and just sort of task colleagues to look for language that could be a possible landing zone. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. Now I have Christina, followed by Georg.
Thank you very much, Uti. And thank you to the co-chairs for this paper. I do wish it had come out last night as planned. It's made today really hard. And I'm especially concerned hearing that there are folks leaving today on a flight, and if there's any way we can make sure that we have the time here. In terms of this paper, just a couple areas, I want to flag places where I have deep concerns, and I also want to flag places with language, since there are still options on the table. With regard to the scope paragraph, people have raised paragraph 23. The problem I have with paragraph 23, it's a mix. It seems like a mix of paragraphs from the objectives and purpose, and a mix of from the modalities. And I find that problematic. If we're going to call this scope, I think we should just have it be scope. So I would are problematic for us. We would not accept the language around principles and provisions under the convention and especially its Paris Agreement. That would need to be taken out. In terms of, sorry, I'm not going in order here. The scale, oh, that is the next one. The section on scale, as I noted on day one, this is not part of our mandate. It's not part of what is in the Sharm decision for what we need to be discussing. There's no agreement. There's been very limited discussion on this as well, and no agreement there. So I would not accept the inclusion of this section in our outcome. In terms of allocation, the allocation section, which I know actually, let's go to board. I can't remember what day. The fact that when I supported the induced migrants, that was not at the trade of taking out the seats for civil society and the other members that are non-parties to the board. I'm glad that it's still here. I see it's bracketed, but right now it's just Indigenous peoples and climate-induced migrants. The inclusion of climate-induced migrants I support, but just wanted to flag that that was not taken into account. I also, we had not agreed to this formulation with respect to then also the developed versus developing countries. We supported the having 2 members from the SIDS and 2 members from the LDCs, but that did not mean that we accepted this unbalanced party composition. So that's on the board. With respect to, let's see what's next. The allocation. There are pieces of what's now, a lot of this is new, and again, because this came out so late, there are pieces of the allocation section, which I'm trying to find on my screen, that we can work with, and there are pieces that we would need more information about. We don't know what these minimum floors or national floors for every country mean, and so would like perhaps it's engagement, or I don't know if there's opportunity for more questions and answers, but I think there are parts of the allocation system we could accept. I think it does need to be streamlined because right now the combination of all of it is very not clear. Legal status, which was up earlier, and I'm not going in order, I apologize. The current paragraph on legal status we could not accept, and we would need to be replaced. We can send you language. I won't spend the time here reading that out. Now, the final 2 points on the financial inputs. We have said from the very beginning that there are, from the convention and from Paris, there are no legal financial obligations for loss and damage. In Article 4, 11, and Article 9 of the Paris Agreement. We are not suggesting that we create legal obligations. That would require, as I think others have said, an amendment to the Paris Agreement, and then we would need to re-ratify. And that, I hope, is not something anyone is looking to do. What we would like to do is make sure that there is a wide variety of sources that can contribute to this fund, the fund to be able to receive it, because we want this fund to be funded, to the points that others have raised. We don't think the language that is in the current co-chair's text goes far enough in terms of making clear the invitation, especially to parties in a position to do so, to contribute. Position to do so, we have been talking about our willingness to change it if there's a perception that in a position to do so means or implies, someone had said it could imply high-income SIDS are in a position to do so. That is not our intention with that language. It could be interested in doing so, ready to do so, willing to do so, but the lack of that language from our proposal and its absence here is also unacceptable to us. Finally, to the points that, final point, I've heard several people say that they could not accept, I think it's paragraph 78. I hope I'm using the right language. The fact that this is a point of contention is absolutely unacceptable to the United States. This was a key piece of the understanding that led to the agreement for this agenda item at Sharm el-Sheikh, which led to the historic decision to establish these funding arrangements, including the fund. The fact that we're even having a discussion in here to take this language out is unacceptable to us. It would be a non-starter. And it is not, if that is taken out, we don't see a pathway to an outcome. I hope that we are not renegotiating the mandate that we had from Sharm and the understanding that is the basis for that mandate, and that we can continue in our remaining hours at this meeting to reach a conclusion. I do agree with others who have said that a landing zone is in sight, and I think we need to take the rest of our time here to land it. The final point I would make is I would want to see a decision text. Now, the co-chairs tabled ahead of our meeting, I think it was note 4, and I would want to go back to that. And so in the next iteration, I would want to see the co-chairs reflect the decision text as well, to reflect any sort of, if we do close this, any of the conclusions we make in the placeholder text for us to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Next I have Georg, followed by Jean-Christophe. Georg, please.
Thank you, Uti. And thanks to you, coaches, for this paper that I know you were working very hard on. And just to say that I really hope that we're now in place to conclude our work and conclude it today as we have agreed that we are going to do. So I hear from some comments in the room that they don't see this as a balanced text, and I think really that view depends on what perspective you take on this. I mean, this paper is not the paper that I would have written if I took if I started from what my positions are. So clearly, if your view is that it's not a paper that reflects your view only, then of course you can say it's an imbalanced text, but that's not my approach to where we are just now. We need to compromise and we need to get to an agreement. There are certainly parts of this text that I have issues with and would like to see different. It's around the scope and the definition of scope in paragraph 23. I think we've been very clear from our interventions. I think what we have put into our discussion that we want a very clear scope and purpose for this fund that ensures that it can make a difference and that it can fill priority gaps towards the larger landscape of funding arrangements. I think this is not what's done in paragraph 23. I'm not sure when Mathieu says that we haven't discussed priority gaps. That's something that I think we've been talked now in your paper as either options or in square brackets, whether it's about the hosting or the fund that we've been discussing, whether it's about designation as an OE, sub-funds and so on. So, and that's where we need to have our discussion now. Of course, if there are other parts of the text that people are unhappy with, we have to discuss that too. But I think we are where we are now. We can accept working on basis of this and your work, but we're in your hands, co-chairs, as far as how you propose us to move forward based on the comments that you have now. But again, we're now in Friday afternoon, evening, and I really want us to finish the work today as we have agreed, and I think it's possible. But then we need to get to work after we've heard this in the initial comments from everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Georg, and indeed we are very keen to conclude this round so that we can get to sorting out the last details on the work, but also think it's very important to give everyone the possibility to hear from colleagues so that we all appreciate each other's take on the document at the table at the moment. Next I have JC, followed by David.
Thank you, Uti, and let me first thank you and Richard for the paper. I've been calling for this paper since Tuesday, and I guess it came on time, since you should have needed some more information for both constituencies and for all members. So now we are with this paper, which is a paper to be negotiated. And I have to say that I'm surprised and even disappointed by the first round of comments from my colleagues from the G77 constituency, because honestly they do not reflect the mood inside the TC over the last 3 days and a half, and certainly not the bilateral productive talks that we had between us, actually. And I look at some of you, actually, but I may look to all of you, actually. So I am a bit disappointed. Something more should have happened that I don't understand, so I'd be happy to understand better what happens. But still, I am still ready to engage with all of you and try to bridge the differences, and specifically the differences you bring forward this afternoon. Happy to have them actually maybe in written, in order to better understand the extent of the differences between us. Happy to work long hours this evening and tonight, because we have to finish our work tonight, but we have some more hours to work, so let's use them in order to bridge these differences. Let me also say that, as Gershom said it very eloquently, that is not Georg, I'm sorry, Georg, sorry. Georg said very eloquently, that's not the paper I will have put on the table myself. It's an attempt to get a compromise. I am not that happy, and I would only mention three areas where I think we should work more together. First, it is eligibility and allocation. Second is the board governance, and third is the location. And honestly, and this is three examples where I think I am not happy, but I do think that we could still find compromise between themselves, because this is not necessarily in a direction. I don't necessarily want to go in a direction that you don't like. I mean, for instance, in the location, if I'm not happy with this paper, is mainly because it's not giving us enough insurance that the fund is going to start as soon as possible, meaning in the beginning of 2024, and no insurance, and I think we can get to that if the board thinks that the location that we have picked is not the good one, it is able to decide and organize the transition towards another location. So I think we have to work at that to be sure that we are giving enough recommendation for the board to adjust the location if necessary. The same about eligibility and allocation. It's not about preventing countries to be part of the activities of the fund. It's mainly to give a good framework for allocating funds. And for that, I suspect, and that I draw that for conversation that we have had together, that to be more specific on the business model of the fund would allow us to also give better guidance to the board in order to allocate efficiently the fund. So that's also, I think, we could work together to get to that point. On the board governance, I mean, I demonstrated some openness, and as former co-chair of the GCF, I appreciate that you want to get to apply the governance of the GCF. Still, I think we can discuss how to get an even better governance than the one of the GCF. And I know that some of you who are in the board have not always been happy with this governance. So I think we can also here find a good compromise. So in a nutshell, I do think there is still room to get to a compromise tonight, but we have only a few hours left. And so, I mean, I am in the hands of the co-chair to organize that, but I am more than happy to work very hard with all of you in order to get to that compromise.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. Next, David, followed by Laurence.
Thanks, Uti. Let me start by joining those who have thanked you and Richard for the hard work you have done in getting this text to us. As others have said, it's late in the piece. We would have benefited from text earlier, and as my colleague Ali articulated, none of us are happy with it. I am very prepared, though, for it to be the basis from which we seek to conclude our work. I won't take the time necessary to flag all the changes I would need to see, as my colleague Albara has done. I have a number, but that said, I remain of the view that if this group has the will, there is the opportunity. But without that will, all the time in the world will not get us to an outcome. The intent in some of the messages I've heard in this discussion this afternoon are discordant with the conversations I've been having with colleagues over preceding days, and like my friend Jean-Christophe, I'm surprised by that tone and some of those messages. I want to be as clear as I can possibly be. I am in no position and will not support under any circumstances the reopening of the basis from which we have been given a mandate and are doing our work as a transitional committee. So paragraph 78 is simply beyond the bounds from which I have any mandate to engage. I assume that is understood by all, and I assume that a spirit of flexibility that I have tried to bring, and I know all my colleagues around this table have tried to bring over the course of this week and in our preceding meetings will apply as we try and finish our work. But just to reiterate, we need to work within the bounds of the instructions we were given and the basis from which our understanding was formed, and the way our parties, the parties that we represent and all other parties came together in Sharm. I have had a number of conversations with our UAE colleagues from the presidency. I listened attentively to Dr. Sultan's message to us this morning, which I certainly take to heart. I implore colleagues to use the flexibility that I know that they have to engage genuinely in the opportunities in front of us. For example, on the location piece, I am aware that that colleagues from the World Bank have been making every effort to try and answer the well-founded questions that colleagues have put to them, and I'm aware that there is now a response to the questions that have been put on direct access, for example. I implore us all to look at these opportunities in good faith and seek to come together. And by come together, I mean come together to conclude our work. And that is, in my mind, inclusive of decision text of the kind that my colleague Christina Chan referenced and that you co-chairs gave to us at the beginning of this week. I will leave it there, but I stand ready, as I'm sure most of us are, to work for as long as you give us time in order to secure that outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next I have Laurence, followed by Debbie. Please.
Thank you, Uchi. Let me join my voice to those of others who have thanked you and the Secretariat for this work. We also would have appreciated to see it earlier, but there we are. So we're going to try and do the best out of the current situation, recognizing that we have limited hours in front of us. I'll try to be brief. Maybe first to start by adding my voice to that of Christina and David in reiterating the importance of the founding understanding under which we came to this conversation regarding the basis of our work. So we also do not expect that paragraph 78 would be a challenge for TC members to come together on. Quick point around sources. We are coming to this conversation looking for a solution that maximizes the amount of funding that is available to help deliver results for all vulnerable countries on the ground. And so this is why I think we are very supportive of the type of addition that has been put forward by Christina. And in the same vein as the comments that she made earlier, the language on the scale for us is something that is very uncomfortable to look at. This is not something that we have discussed within the context of this committee. And also wanted to add our openness to work on language around allocation. We understand the concerns expressed by Diane on behalf of the seats, and as well as the concerns expressed by Angela. We don't think the language around the minimal national allocation floor is the way to go to address those concerns, but we are happy to work to find language that works better. And finally, just to add to the point made by, just to reiterate the point made by Georg on the scope, where we think that there have been very valuable discussions on the priority gaps, which we think need to be captured and reflected in this document. And we also would value finishing our work here with language on the decision, as well as the governing instruments.
Thank you, Laurence. Next I have Debbie, followed by Manjit. Debbie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Uti. So I'm coming in at this point in the conversation because I really wanted to listen to reflections and concerns from colleagues around the room before speaking. So you'll forgive me, Mo. You are a wonderful, gracious host, and we're grateful, but I disagree with you on the state of the text. There are a number of very significant areas which we as the UK absolutely do not like in this text. Nevertheless, I want to pay tribute and thanks to our two co-chairs who are doing a tremendously difficult job in pulling us all together and trying to find a path to navigate through. So I'm very grateful for the text that's on the table, and I do think it's the basis on which we can move forward this afternoon. In terms of process, I would like to repeat, as others have said, that we are going to need, I think, a decision text alongside the governing instrument to close. If we want to close all the conclusions in placeholder text, if we're going to land this, we need to land it as one for a full agreement. I said earlier in the week that I strongly supported the additional seats for LDCs and SIDS. I stand by that. Looking at the co-chair's proposal, we may need to consider the overall board composition further. I really support the sham language on eligibility, so from my perspective, this is fully accepted. On the G77 proposal on allocation, I actually think there's a lot there where we can come together. We support a lot of that text. As outlined by others, again, there's plenty of commonality. For example, as the UK set out during one of my earlier interventions on our view of the scope, and we also understand the need for different modalities of support for different types of L&D responses. So we can indeed consider thresholds or criteria for a rapid response. I would propose that we do it that way rather than triggers per se. But I think, again, there's areas where we can really come together and work through that. Also, to reiterate my earlier position, I think a minimum allocation across the whole fund for LDCs and SIDS is a critical safeguard. Deanne's spoken about that this afternoon. And the reason why it's a critical safeguard is because we know that SIDS and LDCs, across the whole of the international climate finance machinery do not get the same sort of allocations as other countries do. And again, this is not about differentiating across need, it's about differentiating across the funding that's available through the whole system. And we know if we don't put a safeguard in, we will recreate the same sort of challenges in that system for those countries when they're trying to access finance. But again, really willing to come together and think about how this sort of safeguard can work with other options, such as sub-funds, which have been mentioned by colleagues this afternoon. Sub-funds may work better in some cases. But the UK is very keen to work in a small group with colleagues today to try and find possible landing zones, if that's something that the co-chairs are keen to support. So long and short, I want to really support, and I'm looking forward to hearing the co-chairs' views on working modalities to land this. But from the UK position, we came here very firmly this week to land an outcome across all 4 aspects of the mandate that we've been given from Sharm. That remains my firm intention. We are here to find a landing zone, and I'm here to work with all of you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Then turning to Manjit, followed by June. Manjit, please.
Thank you, Uti. Uti, let me start by appreciating the work and the text that you had presented. But I think that we are concerned that we are not on track to deliver the mandate and live up with the high expectation that people have set on us. This morning, we heard from the incoming presidency stating that we have no other option but to deliver, but we are not still on that track. Nonetheless, we are also confident that what we have done based on our circumstances, I think we really want to again appreciate the co-chair and the colleagues to come up to this moment. Like many other colleagues, like even though we have been able to streamline the text to much extent, narrow the options, we are concerned that the text does not appear as per the expectation on many things that we have said, both in terms of the finding the best compromise, but also I think finalizing many details that we are mandated. We feel that the time remaining today should be able to use like maybe to streamline many things that we have in front of us, maybe so that we can ensuring that we will return well prepared, holding necessary mandate when we come to the next meeting to respond to what we have been mandated and fulfill our commitment by COP28. I just want to repeat, like there are some absolute priorities for us that colleagues have already highlighted, but I just want to pick up some of them. Direct access to the fund, therefore, I think what Ambassador Adao highlighted earlier, Haza suggested on Para 63, we support that. The scale and the sustainability of the fund, the legal personality of the fund, and there we find, I think the existing option on the table does not go in line with that, so therefore I think it's difficult for us to support what has been presented. The grant support for the least developed country remains key. Here I support what Ambassador Adao mentioned earlier, including many other comments he made. On the governance of the board, we support the seat allocation to the parties, and we remain open to the inclusive and the transparent process following the existing practices. On other various paragraphs, we support what Matthias said on behalf of G77. I'm not sure that I will be again here in the room, like when we will be getting back after this session. So I just want to emphasize that over the billion population in the least developed countries are experiencing this rapid increasing the consequences of climate change every year. And this is the result of our collective failure that we have not been able to achieve the targets that we have set. the window for 1.5 degrees is narrowing, the finance mobilization target that we have set we haven't met, the emission reduction that we haven't been able to go with all these targets. I come from the region where even in the best case scenario, even if we achieve 1.5 degree, 1/3 of the glaciers will melt, having a direct impact on the agriculture, on drinking water, on energy generation. So the consequences will be much higher than what we have thought or have analyzed in past. So I believe any delay that we will have in our effort here, in the work that we are doing, will lead to more suffering of people in the ground. Therefore, I urge colleagues to show utmost flexibility to address this. I think we can take on board many of the suggestions that has been presented here, and I support the views that has been shared by the developing country. Let's try to, I think, work making some small tweak and adjust those in the document so that we have a basis for us to work on it to operationalize the fund by COP28. Thank you.
Thank you, Manjit. I still have two people who haven't spoken yet, so we have June followed by Hannah, and then we turn to those with their flags up for the second time. So June, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first of all really thank both the co-chairs for doing leading us and trying to listen to us and try to bring together the minds of the various parties. And I think since we are at this, the last day and in the last hours of our meeting, I think we really do need to try to come to meeting of minds. And my position is that we have come here to try to do that, and I hope that all parties can do that. Since, as I said, the time is very limited, I just and many of the points I think have been elaborated already. I just say maybe two things. One is regarding the financial inputs part, the language. I think the whole thrust, what we are trying to do is to capture, the widest possible variety of funding sources, and I think that's quite important for us in our current today, how we are working in this world. So I think that kind of language is quite important. The second point is this is about the board composition. I think you have already tried to strike a balance between whether you call it developed or developing, or maybe contributors and others or whatever. But I think this whole notion of balance or parity, that kind of thing, is quite important. So maybe there might be some room for improvement on this front. So I think I will stop there. Thank you very much.
And thank you, John. Hannah.
Impacts, but actually deliver for them in a timely manner. And of course, we trust the co-chairs to perhaps agree on a process that can help the successful closure of the text. Maybe you would consider consulting on where we go from here, but we're here to support you 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Then turning to Alvaro, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and I also want to reiterate my support for the points that were mentioned earlier by Matthias on behalf of G77, and I want to maybe speak to some of the other elements on the text. So on paragraph 23, we also agree to the points by Matthias and many colleagues on the scope, and I will not be repeating that. On paragraph 26, we see it's important to retain the part on the operating entity. I'm surprised with the bracket that this one, especially that this one was established under the COP and CMA, and so by default we expect this to be an operating entity. On paragraph 31, we agree with the G77 on also referring to the GCF model on the board composition and the deletion of paragraph H. We see that the subsequent paragraph does speak to that matter and can be further also enhanced and developed at a later stage. On paragraph 35, I see also further improvements is key to ensure compliance with the government instruments and the functions. So I would propose adding a language that speaks to ensuring compliance. The functions would ensure compliance with the governing instruments and the functions. On paragraph 36, I also propose adding a sub-bullet stating that the board will ensure that policies and approaches are in line with the principles of the provisions of the Convention and the Paris Agreement. On paragraph 75, we firmly don't accept the language there. We will not repeat the points I believe I have said, and I want to request you co-chairs to reflect the GCF language, as this is something that was highlighted from day one and repeated at multiple occasions, the language, and I will read the language maybe for the sake of clarity, just to, if you can bear with me. So the language reads as follows. The fund will receive financial inputs from developed country parties to the convention, and the fund may also receive financial inputs from a variety of sources, public and private, including alternative sources. So that would replace what we have in the financial inputs. And again, just to reiterate, that has never stopped any voluntary contribution to the fund, and we have the GCF as an example of that. And also on paragraph 75, I believe that this language should be the language that would replace what we have in there, and I would really caution against reflecting anything related to pricing mechanisms or areas that are not, that are already now in premature discussions, and this is something that's completely beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here. On paragraph on allocation, paragraph 83 to 86, we really can't accept the language that is being in there. We see that paragraph 87, while it's not perfect, it captures all the elements that are in paragraph 83 to 86, and I believe there was a language that was read by the G77, and we're okay with that, but we definitely 82 to 86 does not really reflect paragraphs that we can work with or we can consider. And finally, on paragraph I'm not sure what it was, but on the monitoring side, we also want the deletion of the part that speaks to the participatory. I'm trying to find it. And apologies, I'm going over the text. 89. Okay, so on paragraph 89, that speaks about
my co-chair.
Thank you so much, co-chairs, and just following and listening to colleagues. There was a clear request that we stick to the SHARM outcome, but it seems that this has been selective request. So in some cases we are discussing the eligibility, and other cases we are trying to pick and choose parts of the SHARM outcome. So the issue of how you reflected the eligibility as per SHARM, this is not part of flexibility. This is part of commitment to what we have agreed to, and this similarly applies to everything. We believe that if we are really, as was said by some, that we are respecting the SHARM outcome, then we should respect it in terms of the eligibility, the access, the allocation, and the rest of the stuff. I fully agree with what JC had mentioned. We need to reflect on main points that we believe are very important to operationalize this fund. And from our point of view, for us, it is very clear that the legal status is one crucial component. As it stands, the paragraph 25 as it stands does not reflect that, and we had a long discussion on the issue. For us, we want to see this fund having the legal personality. Again, the linkage with the COP and CMA, those are also very crucial components for us. It reflects not only the issue of eligibility, but it also gives the safeguards for in wherever this fund is going to be hosted, however it is going to be operationalized. This is a very crucial element for its operationalization. I heard many colleagues reflecting on the board composition. I think that was my understanding. Either we go with the GCF 50-50, or if you want to increase seats, then this will be increasing from this seats that requested, because in practice, already developing countries in their current seats under the GCF, SIDS and LDCs are included de facto. So, but if we want to add, then we add, and then we have the current proposal from you is fine. We can look at what was mentioned on the participation of civil society, but I haven't seen there clear reflection that the majority should be from developing countries. So representatives from the civil society should be only even from developing countries, not even developed. Those are representatives of the impacted communities in developing countries. This fund is created for developing countries. So I think civil society there should be only developing countries, and only those are the only ones. I agree with JC that the model of the fund is something that we need to work on, which will really make it clearer when it comes to eligibility and allocation. And I think this is something that we need to really engage on. And we are ready to engage. We are committed to deliver, and we hope that we can deliver today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mo, and very much indeed. I couldn't agree with you more that we want to make sure that we deliver today. I mean, I think that is the deadline, and after today, basically, Richard and I, we expect to be out of this job, hopefully have some other jobs, but not this one, this particular one. Last speaker, Heike, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the floor again. I will be brief. And thanks also to all colleagues who have engaged with really concrete proposals to build the bridge that we need to finish soon. As others have spoken on the other issues, like, for example, the decision text, the point I fully would also support, I would just like to mention the funding arrangements that are also part of our mandate. And I don't know how co-chairs are going to steer us further, but I experienced really exciting way of dealing with funding arrangements over the last 10 months. And it's a key part of our mandate. And if I could maybe, or will hear others say, okay, now it's so late, we, until the last day, will not once really engage on meaningful text on funding arrangements. We are not delivering on our mandate, and I'm in no position to agree on anything. And I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not then later told that I never said it. So thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you, Heike. And certainly from the side of the co-chairs, I mean, we're very conscious of the fact that we haven't had a substantive discussion on funding arrangements while here in Ashwan. I mean, we had prepared an informal note, but let's not sort of, we take note of that, and we'll try to provide a way forward shortly. Haja, you were asking for the floor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Uti. And I'm actually coming in on the text on funding arrangements because we are discussing the whole text here, and I did not comment on it before. I just wanted to go to paragraph 104, where it says that the funding arrangements may also include the convening of a biannual coordination, and I want that to be annual and not biannual. And also it says this biannual coordination and complementary, in brackets, dialogue. I would like that to be the high-level impact council or the high-level council again. And then under that paragraph, if you go to E, it says that it reports to the parties through the WIM, and I would propose that it report through the COP. And again, it says on the dialogue, and I want the dialogue to be the council meetings, including on the follow-up of the implementation of the recommendation onto the funding arrangements. And basically, I would like to replace again on the dialogues to be the council. And that's my suggestion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Haja. I'm now going to consult with Richard on what we're going to do next. I take the point that we only right now focused on the discussion on the part 2, so we'll come back to the other parts in due course. Thank you very much for this very substantive round of comments, and let me now consult with Richard.
Okay, colleagues, can I just ask the developing country colleagues to meet me outside in the corner over there so we can have a quick huddle, please? Okay, colleagues, please settle down so we can make an announcement on what the next steps are. So please take your seats. Yes, we'll have a meeting, but the French are not allowed there because they lost in the rugby. Only semi-final countries that are in the semi-finals of the World Cup.
Which sport?
Rugby. We're still in the. Oh, jeez. Yes. So here, can you just bring the developing countries into the room, please? They don't seem to listen. Yeah, we'll replay the match, I think, in November. Don't we come to Paris for reunion? Okay, colleagues, so some people aren't in the room, but so we've decided to try in another attempt to speed up progress, to break into two small groups. The G77 is not that comfortable with breaking into small groups. We don't think it's a viable modality, but we have to take the chance to see whether colleagues can have some more detailed discussion on specific issues. So we're going to have two small groups. One small group will meet in this room, and that group will be on allocation. Thank you, Uti. And today you will discuss the paragraphs. In that section, you'll reflect on what people have said, and hopefully you'll come back to us with a short line, streamlined text. You may also come back to us with a more complicated text, but whatever it is that you come back with us, we will appreciate. You will have 1 hour, right? Then the second small group will be on financial inputs and sources, and they will meet
In Jasmine.
in Jasmine room downstairs. You will equally have 1 hour. Please self-appoint one developing, or not, whatever it is. We would ask, though, in order to ensure balance and fairness, that there are 5 members from developed countries and 5 members from developing countries that speak, right? So it's equal. Advisors are welcome. Other board members are welcome as well. After 1 hour, so you come back to us at 5:30. You give us a very brief report back, and then we will proceed on to the next part of the document, which will be part 3 on the funding arrangements. We will then take a round of comments. We will limit your comments to 2 minutes each, and then we will see if we can do the same exercise in the small groups. That gives time for Uti and I to start working on amending the text where we've been given instructions to. Once that is concluded, we'll get a sense of where we are, and then we may then go on to the part 1, right? Or we'll see this. So that's the modality for the next 3 or 4 hours. The developing country colleagues, so there are 4 seats that are, 5 seats actually, that are intended to fly out somewhere between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. We are trying to see if we can rearrange tickets for colleagues, but please understand that colleagues are not leaving to go on holiday, they're leaving to transfer to other meetings, and so there may be a situation whereby colleagues simply cannot move their flights because they have to be somewhere. So respect that. We will come back to that issue of dealing with 5 absent seats from developing countries. So that would mean that there would be more developed countries in the TC than the developing countries. So we'll come back to this. So please, you have 1 hour to go into your groups and have a rich discussion and come back to us at 5:30. So I'm going to suspend the session on that basis. I've done room assignments. Would there also be a secretariat person in each room to try to do the typing or what have you, if that's possible, please? So thank you very much, colleagues. Good speed. One group here is on allocation, downstairs on financial inputs in room Jasmine downstairs. Please. No, it's TC members, TC advisors. Okay, colleagues on allocation, can we please have somebody who wishes to chair? So if there's a person, then we'll allow somebody to replace them on their seat. I'm not chairing it. Heike. This room.
Funding, financial.
I just need somebody to volunteer as the chair.